Greetings to the chosen. The largest inheritances are not always seized through force. They are seized by persuading the legitimate heir that they were never meant to receive them. There is a wisdom that says truth behaves strangely. It can be postponed, concealed, dismissed, and even mocked. Yet eventually it insists on being witnessed. Across the ages, abandoned testaments have reappeared. Concealed deeds have reshaped entire bloodlines, and humble individuals have learned that what they assumed belonged to another was stamped with their identity the whole time. The unsettling reality is not that these accounts occur. The unsettling reality is how frequently they occur because individuals simply gave up searching. Consider this carefully. Some of the most priceless possessions a human can hold are not necessarily stored inside a vault or hidden behind a massive entrance. Occasionally they exist as forgotten entitlements, neglected archives, abandoned chances, or fragments of legacy that quietly lingered for the proper individual to reveal them. Society prefers to assure individuals that if something genuinely belonged to them, they would already possess it. The facts paint a far different picture. And truthfully, if existence had a support line, several of us would have been holding for years asking, "Excuse me, I believe someone made off with my delivery." Sadly, the queue would likely be quite long. Today's message extends beyond ordinary belongings. It touches on belonging, selfhood, timing, and the harsh fact that countless individuals spend decades existing below the level of what was truly intended for them. Not because they lacked capability, but because they were never handed the complete account. As this develops, you will begin recognizing that what appears as chance often conceals a trail of overlooked hints, uncomfortable realities, and remarkable findings. Sometimes the most startling moment is not uncovering the concealed inheritance. It is discovering that it was tied to you from the start. Number 1. The inheritance was never concealed from you. It was concealed within another person's account. One of the most painful realities to accept is that individuals do not typically lose what belongs to them because it was locked up or buried beyond reach. More frequently, they lose it because they accepted a narrative that was passed to them without ever examining it. Someone declared there was nothing there. Someone insisted it was already resolved. Someone maintained that chapter had closed. After hearing that same version repeatedly, most individuals stopped searching. Not because the facts vanished, but because their interest did. Narratives hold tremendous influence because they define what we consider achievable. If you are told from childhood that your family possessed nothing, you seldom consider reviewing ancient records. If everyone behaves as if particular discussions never occurred, you start accepting they never mattered. Gradually, another individual's interpretation of events quietly transforms into your own truth. That is how precious things remain concealed in plain view, not behind barriers, but behind beliefs. The remarkable truth is that facts do not need to be invented. They only need to be revealed. Evidence has a manner of enduring even when recollections fade. A forgotten record, an unnoticed name, a minor detail from an old exchange or a question no one thought to raise can suddenly connect fragments that never appeared related before. What looked ordinary begins making sense in ways no one anticipated. This is why accepting every narrative at face value can be more harmful than losing something outright. A stolen object can occasionally be reclaimed. A stolen conviction can prevent someone from searching for an entire lifetime. The instant you begin scrutinizing the narratives you have inherited, rather than simply repeating them, everything transforms. You cease existing within another person's conclusions and begin uncovering your own. Sometimes the most powerful revelation is not that something valuable has finally appeared. It is recognizing it never truly vanished to begin with. It was simply buried beneath a narrative that was never meant to become your truth. Number 2. Every household carries an unmentioned possession. No one is permitted to discuss it. Every household has its narratives, but equally important are the narratives that never get voiced. There are discussions that abruptly halt when the wrong person approaches, names that vanish from ancestry without explanation, and incidents everyone appears to remember differently. While not every secret involves currency or land, nearly every household has something that remains buried, because exposing it would compel individuals to confront uncomfortable realities. Sometimes the concealed possession is apparent. A piece of real estate, an old enterprise, valuable terrain, or a bequest that quietly disappeared from dialogue. Other times it is leverage, a long-forgotten arrangement or associations that could alter someone's destiny. The quiet surrounding it is not always unintentional. In many cases, individuals remain silent because the truth would disturb the balance that has served them for years. Once a concealed possession becomes known, old decisions get questioned, forgotten pledges resurface, and individuals who were once ignored suddenly warrant another examination. What makes this even more captivating is how quiet becomes normal over time. A generation grows up believing certain questions should never be raised. They accept missing fragments as though they were never significant. Eventually, no one remembers whether the quiet began to shield the family, shield someone's standing, or shield someone's benefit. The secret becomes woven into the family's culture, passed along without anyone openly acknowledging it exists. But quiet has boundaries. Records endure, recollections return, unexpected conversations take place. A single document, an unnoticed photograph, or one candid relative can expose what years of deliberate quiet attempted to keep hidden. When that occurs, individuals often appear surprised, but the truth did not suddenly materialize. It had been waiting patiently beneath years of avoidance. The greatest lesson is this: what families refuse to discuss can occasionally reveal more than what they proudly celebrate. Concealed possessions are rarely guarded by sturdy locks alone. They are guarded by patterns of quiet, accepted narratives, and the belief that no one will ever look beyond what they have been told. The moment someone does, an entirely different family history can come into view. Number 3. The rightful owners typically arrive last. There is a pattern that repeats more frequently than individuals realize. The people who create the most commotion about possessing something are not always the ones who genuinely have a claim to it. They guard it, dispute over it, and behave as though their confidence alone proves they belong. But confidence is not ownership, and possession is not always proof. Sometimes individuals occupy a place simply because no one has challenged the narrative they have been telling. The rightful owner often arrives considerably later, not because they chose to delay, but because they were never provided the complete picture. They may have spent years believing they had no connection to what stood before them. While others were busy asserting authority, they were busy living their lives, unaware that an important fragment of their own narrative had been omitted. That delay creates an intriguing contrast. One group becomes comfortable, assuming everything is settled permanently. The other has no reason to question anything, because they were taught there was nothing to question. Then something shifts. Her forgotten document surfaces. A conversation reveals a missing detail. An old record finally makes sense. Suddenly, what appeared permanent begins to move. The most astonishing part is how rapidly confidence vanishes when the truth enters the room. Individuals who once spoke with certainty suddenly become defensive. Questions they mocked yesterday become questions they desperately want to evade today. That is because facts possess a way of exposing the gap between holding something and having a genuine claim to it. This concept reaches beyond property. It applies to chances, family history, reputation, and even selfhood. Many individuals spend years standing outside doors they believe were never meant for them, only to discover they had every right to walk through them from the beginning. The delay was never evidence they did not belong. It was simply evidence that the truth had not yet caught up with the narrative. When the rightful owner finally arrives, the greatest surprise is not that they came. It is that what appeared untouchable was never as secure as everyone believed. Truth carries a quiet power. It may require time to appear, but once it does, it possesses a way of placing everything back where it genuinely belongs. Number 4. Certain doors remain locked until you become impossible to manipulate. One of the largest misconceptions individuals carry is believing that every closed door represents rejection. In truth, some doors remain shut because opening them too early would place something valuable into the hands of someone who is not yet prepared to safeguard it. Access without wisdom can become a burden, and opportunity without discernment can easily be seized by individuals who understand how to influence, deceive, or pressure others. There are people who appear helpful on the surface, but excel at steering choices that benefit themselves. They know precisely when to flatter, when to discourage, and when to make someone doubt their own judgment. If you are easily persuaded, anything valuable that enters your life can quietly end up serving someone else's interests, instead of your own. That is why maturity often serves as a greater safeguard than any lock or security system. As life progresses, something begins to transform. Experience teaches lessons that advice never could. You start recognizing hollow promises, concealed motives, and conversations that sound convincing but leave you feeling uncertain. You become less impressed by appearances and more interested in actions. Gradually, you stop seeking approval and begin trusting your own capacity to think clearly. That inner shift alters everything. The same people who once could have shaped your choices suddenly realize their old methods no longer function. Their words lose their power because your understanding has grown stronger than their influence. You are no longer making decisions from fear, guilt, or the need to satisfy everyone around you. This is often the moment when long-awaited chances begin to appear. Not because the world suddenly became kinder, but because you have become harder to control. You now possess the confidence to ask difficult questions, read the fine details, challenge unclear answers, and walk away from arrangements that do not feel right. The locked door was never there to keep you out forever. It was there to protect what was on the other side, until you became the kind of person who could recognize its value, defend it wisely, and refuse to let anyone convince you to surrender what rightfully belongs to you. Number 5. The greatest theft is not taking property. It is convincing someone they never had a claim. The most devastating theft rarely begins with someone breaking a lock or carrying away something valuable. It begins much earlier, inside the mind. The moment a person is convinced they have no right to ask questions, no reason to search for answers, or no claim to what may belong to them, the real loss has already taken place. Once belief is stolen, everything else becomes much easier to take. This is how many chances disappear without anyone noticing. People are told that is not for you, or someone else deserves it more. After hearing those words enough times, they stop checking the facts. They stop investigating. They stop believing that their name could ever be connected to something significant. They do not walk away because they were forced to. They walk away because they have been persuaded that there is nothing worth staying for. The frightening part is that this does not only happen with property. It happens with careers, family legacies, enterprises, ideas, and even personal identity. Some people spend decades existing beneath their potential simply because they accepted limits that were handed to them by others. They mistake someone else's opinion for reality and never realize how much they surrendered without a fight. But the truth carries a stubborn way of resurfacing. It often begins with one uncomfortable question that refuses to fade. Then another. Suddenly old conversations sound different. Forgotten details become important. Things that never made sense start fitting together. The narrative you accepted for years begins to fracture. And through those fractures, the truth begins to shine. That moment can change everything because confidence returns where doubt once lived. You stop assuming and start verifying. You stop accepting convenient explanations and start looking for evidence. You realize that having a claim is not the same as loudly demanding something. It is about knowing the truth and refusing to let false narratives define your future. The greatest theft was never the property itself. It was the attempt to convince you that you were never meant to have it. Once that lie collapses, everything built upon it begins to crumble as well. Sometimes the first thing you recover is not the property. It is the courage to believe that the truth was worth searching for all along. Number 6. Someone benefited from your delay more than your absence. Time is often viewed as something neutral, but in many situations, delay can quietly become an advantage for someone else. When important information remains hidden, when decisions are postponed, or when someone is kept unaware of what belongs to them, another person may continue enjoying the benefits that come from that silence. The longer the truth remains undiscovered, the longer the existing arrangement appears normal. This is why delays can be more powerful than people realize. A person does not always need to take something directly to benefit from it. Sometimes all they need is for the rightful person to remain unaware. As long as questions are not asked, records are not examined, and conversations are avoided, the situation stays comfortable for those already benefiting from it. The interesting part is that delay often hides behind reasonable explanations. People may say now is not the right time. There is nothing important there, or it is too complicated to look into. Some of these statements may sound harmless, but repeated enough times, they can prevent someone from discovering information that could completely change their understanding of the situation. However, time possesses a way of challenging arrangements built on incomplete truths. Circumstances change, new information appears. People who once felt secure suddenly realize that what they considered permanent was only temporary because it depended on nobody looking deeper. The moment awareness arrives, the entire dynamic shifts. The person who was once waiting on the outside begins asking different questions. The things that were ignored suddenly require answers. The explanations that once seemed acceptable begin to feel incomplete. What was hidden by time starts being revealed by time. The biggest realization is that delay does not always mean denial. Sometimes it simply means someone else had more time to enjoy what was never fully theirs to keep. But when the truth finally catches up, comfort built on silence becomes difficult to maintain. The most powerful discoveries are often not about what was lost. They are about understanding how long something valuable was kept out of reach and who benefited while the truth remained unseen. Number 7. The map was public. Only the meaning was private. The most surprising discoveries in life are often not hidden because nobody could find them. They are hidden because nobody knew what they were looking at. The clues were there, sitting in plain view, but they appeared ordinary because their true meaning had not yet been understood. A name written on an old document, a conversation repeated for years, a forgotten connection between two people, or a small detail in family history can seem completely insignificant until the right piece of information brings everything together. Suddenly, something that looked meaningless becomes the missing piece of a much larger story. This happens because people rarely search for answers they do not know they need. If someone believes there is nothing important to discover, they will naturally overlook the signs around them. The human mind possesses a habit of filtering out what it considers irrelevant. Sometimes the difference between missing the truth and finding it is not the amount of information available. It is the ability to recognize what matters. Many life-changing discoveries begin with a simple shift in perspective. The facts were not new. The evidence was not suddenly created. The only thing that changed was the understanding of what those facts meant. A person begins looking at familiar things through a different lens, and suddenly the ordinary becomes extraordinary. This is why knowledge is powerful. Information alone does not always create change. Understanding does. Two people can look at the same document, hear the same conversation, or see the same chance. Yet only one recognizes its importance because they understand the deeper connection. The greatest secrets are often protected not by complicated systems, but by simplicity. They remain hidden because they blend into everyday life. They are overlooked because people expect important things to announce themselves loudly. But truth does not always arrive with a warning sign. Sometimes it waits quietly among details everyone else ignored. The map was never missing. The directions were always there. The real challenge was having the awareness to finally understand where they were pointing. Number 8. Ownership begins in the mind long before it appears on paper. Most people think ownership begins the moment a document is signed, a key is handed over, or a name appears on official records. While those things matter, they are often the final confirmation of something that started much earlier. True ownership begins with understanding, responsibility, and the confidence to recognize what is connected to you. A person can have access to something valuable and still lose it because they do not understand its importance. On the other hand, someone who understands the value of what they have will protect it, learn about it, and make decisions that preserve it for the future. Ownership is not just about possession, it is about awareness. This is why some people receive opportunities and immediately lose them, while others turn small beginnings into something powerful. The difference is often not what they received, it is how they viewed it. One person sees a temporary advantage, another sees a responsibility that must be handled with wisdom. The same principle applies to hidden property, forgotten assets, and unexpected discoveries. The moment someone realizes this is connected to me, their entire approach changes. They begin researching instead of ignoring. They begin protecting instead of assuming. They begin making decisions based on knowledge rather than uncertainty. Before anything becomes official, there is usually an internal transformation. A person must first accept the possibility that they have a place in the story. They must move beyond doubt, beyond old assumptions, and beyond the limitations created by other people's opinions. This does not mean pretending to own something that is not yours. It means developing the mindset to recognize legitimate opportunities and responsibilities when they appear. Many people miss valuable moments because they do not see themselves as someone who could be trusted with them. The most powerful form of ownership starts within. Documents can confirm rights, but they cannot create the confidence, discipline, and understanding needed to handle those rights properly. When the mind accepts responsibility first, the external proof becomes the final piece of a much deeper process. The paper may arrive later, but the transformation begins long before anyone else can see it. Number 9. The property is really proof that your life was bigger than you were told. Sometimes the greatest shock is not discovering something valuable. It is discovering that the narrative you believed about yourself was incomplete. For years, a person can move through life carrying an identity built from limited information. They may believe their family had no influence, their opportunities were ordinary, or their future was already defined. Then, one discovery holds the power to challenge everything they thought they knew. A hidden property, or unexpected asset, represents more than physical ownership. It becomes evidence that there were parts of their history they never had access to. It reveals connections, decisions, and possibilities that existed long before they became aware of them. What seemed like an ordinary life suddenly has missing chapters that deserve to be read. This is why certain discoveries feel so personal. They do not just affect someone's finances or circumstances. They force them to reconsider their entire understanding of where they came from and what they are capable of becoming. The discovery becomes a reminder that a person's value was never limited by what they were told. Many people underestimate their own story because they only know the parts that were openly shared with them. They judge their future based on the information they have received, forgetting that important details may still be waiting to be uncovered. A person can spend years thinking they are starting from nothing while carrying a history filled with resources, lessons, and opportunities they never recognized. The most powerful part of discovering something unexpected is the internal change that follows. It creates a new level of confidence, not because a possession suddenly appeared, but because the person realizes they were connected to something greater than they understood. Sometimes the biggest inheritance is not the property itself. It is the realization that your life has always contained more possibilities than you were able to see. The discovery does not create your worth. It simply reveals what was already there. What changes everything is not just finding something valuable. It is finally understanding that your story was never as small as you believed. Number 10. People panic when forgotten records suddenly become relevant. For a long time, forgotten records can appear powerless. Old documents sit untouched. Names on papers become meaningless, and details from the past are dismissed as things that no longer matter. People often assume that if something has been ignored for years, it has lost its importance. But history possesses a way of proving that time does not always erase the truth. Sometimes it simply hides its value until the right moment arrives. A record that seemed insignificant yesterday can become extremely important when new circumstances bring it back into focus. A forgotten agreement, an overlooked name, or a detail buried in paperwork can suddenly change how people understand a situation. The information was always there. The difference is that people finally realized what it meant. This is when discomfort begins. Those who benefited from nobody looking closely may suddenly feel threatened by questions. Explanations that once sounded convincing may no longer hold the same strength. Things that were ignored become things that require answers. The reason for the panic is not always the record itself. It is the possibility that the record reveals a truth people hoped would never become relevant. The interesting thing about facts is that they do not need constant attention to remain real. A document does not become less accurate because years pass. A name does not lose its significance because people stopped mentioning it. Time can create distance, but it cannot always remove what happened. Many important discoveries happen because someone finally decides to examine what others overlooked. They look closer, ask deeper questions, and refuse to accept that something is meaningless simply because it has been forgotten. The past possesses a strange way of waiting patiently. What was ignored can return with unexpected importance. What was dismissed can become undeniable. And when forgotten records finally speak, they often reveal a reality that forces everyone involved to see the situation differently. Sometimes the most powerful evidence is not something newly created. It is something old that was quietly waiting for the right person to understand its value. Number 11. The greatest barrier was not distance. It was distraction. Many people believe they fail to discover important opportunities because they are too far away from them. They think the answer must be hidden somewhere impossible to reach, requiring special access, perfect timing, or some extraordinary advantage. But often the biggest obstacle is not the distance between them and the truth. It is everything competing for their attention along the way. Distraction carries a powerful effect because it does not always look harmful. It can appear as constant busyness, endless responsibilities, unnecessary worries, or chasing things that feel urgent but hold little long-term value. A person can spend years moving from one thing to another while never giving enough attention to the details that could completely change their understanding of their own life. The truth is that important discoveries rarely announce themselves loudly. They often hide inside ordinary moments, a conversation that seemed unimportant, a document that was never carefully read, a family story that was quickly dismissed, or an opportunity that was overlooked because something else seemed more exciting at the time. When the mind is constantly occupied, valuable clues become easy to miss. This is why focus is more powerful than speed. Running in the wrong direction only creates more distance. Sometimes the answer is not found by searching harder, but by paying closer attention. When distractions are removed, patterns become easier to see, connections become clearer. Things that once appeared random begin to reveal meaning. Many people do not lack opportunities. They lack the awareness to recognize them when they appear. They are looking for something dramatic while ignoring the quiet signs already around them. The greatest discoveries often come when someone finally slows down enough to notice what was always present. The missing piece was not necessarily hidden in another place. It was hidden beneath layers of noise, assumptions, and constant movement. Sometimes the breakthrough does not require going farther. It requires seeing better. The barrier was never the distance between you and the answer. It was everything that kept you from noticing how close the answer had been all along. Number 12. The property is less valuable than the access it gives you. Many people look at valuable property and immediately focus on the obvious things, the size, the location, the price, or the material worth. While those things matter, they are often only the surface of what makes something truly powerful. The greatest value of an asset is sometimes not what it can be sold for, but what it allows a person to reach. A property can become a doorway to opportunities that were previously unavailable. It can create connections, improve credibility, provide stability, and open conversations that would have never happened before. The physical asset is only one part of the story. The influence, relationships, and possibilities connected to it can be far more significant. This is something many people overlook because they are trained to measure value only by numbers. They ask how much is it worth, but forget to ask what does it make possible. A valuable asset can change a person's position in ways that cannot always be calculated. It can create access to new environments, new knowledge, and new opportunities that continue producing benefits long after the initial discovery. This is why some people with valuable possessions still struggle, while others turn a single opportunity into something much bigger. The difference is understanding. One person sees an object, another sees a platform. One person sees what something is today, another sees what it can become tomorrow. The real power of ownership is not simply having something that others want. It is having something that expands your options. It gives you choices, confidence, and the ability to move differently through life. The greatest discoveries are often not valuable because of what they contain. They are valuable because of where they lead. A hidden property may appear to be just land, a building, or an asset. But its true impact may come from the doors it opens, the opportunities it creates, and the new path it places in front of someone. Sometimes the greatest treasure is not the thing you receive, it is the world that becomes available because you received it. Number 13. What shocked everyone was not that it existed, it was that your name belonged beside it. The most surprising discoveries are not always shocking because of what was found. Sometimes the real shock comes from who is connected to it. People can accept that valuable things exist in the world, but they struggle when the person they underestimated suddenly becomes part of the story. For years, people may judge someone based only on what they can see. They measure success by current circumstances, visible achievements, or social position. They assume they know someone's limits because they have only seen one chapter of their life. But hidden connections, forgotten histories, and unexpected opportunities can reveal that their understanding was incomplete. When a person's name appears beside something valuable, it challenges old opinions. Suddenly, past judgments begin to look different. The person who was overlooked becomes the person everyone wants answers from. The individual who was ignored becomes the person whose story people are suddenly interested in hearing. This moment can be uncomfortable because it forces people to admit that they may have been wrong. It is easy to respect someone after their value becomes obvious. The real test is recognizing potential before the evidence appears. Many people only celebrate what they can already see. But true insight comes from understanding that someone's worth is not always displayed on the surface. A discovery like this does more than change circumstances. It changes perception. It reminds everyone that appearances can be incomplete and that a person's current situation does not always represent their future. The greatest surprise is often not the asset, the opportunity, or the inheritance itself. It is the realization that the person connected to it was someone they never expected. The name they overlooked was the name that mattered. The person they underestimated was the person who had a place in the story all along. Sometimes the world does not need to create someone's value. It simply needs a moment when the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Number 14. This was never about reward. It was about restoration. The difference between a reward and restoration runs deeper than most people realize. A reward is something given because of an achievement. Restoration is something returned because it was connected to you in the first place. That is why certain moments in life feel different. They do not simply feel like gaining something new. They feel like something that was missing has finally found its way back. Restoration carries a different kind of meaning because it brings the past and the present together. It reveals that certain things were unfinished, certain stories were incomplete, and certain truths were waiting for the right moment to be recognized. What appears sudden to others may actually be the result of years of hidden events, overlooked details, and circumstances slowly moving toward a final answer. The powerful part about restoration is that it does not only change what someone has, it changes how they see themselves. When something valuable returns, it can challenge years of doubt and replace uncertainty with understanding. It reminds a person that their journey was not as random as it seemed, and that parts of their story existed beyond what they could see. But restoration is not just about receiving. It also arrives with responsibility. Anything valuable requires wisdom, patience, and maturity. The true test is not only getting something back, but knowing how to handle it once it arrives. Many people focus on the moment of discovery, but forget that every restored opportunity brings a new level of responsibility. What makes restoration so powerful is that it exposes what time could not erase. It proves that forgotten does not always mean gone. Delayed does not always mean denied. Sometimes things remain connected to their rightful place, even when the path to that place is unclear. The discovery of a hidden property is never just about land, buildings, or material value. Beneath the surface, it represents something much deeper: forgotten stories, overlooked truths, unexpected connections, and the power of finally understanding what was always there. Throughout this journey, we have seen how the greatest secrets are not always protected by walls or locked doors. Sometimes they are protected by silence, assumptions, distractions, and stories that were repeated so many times that people stopped questioning them. A person can spend years believing they have nothing only to discover that their history was far richer and more meaningful than they were ever told. The real transformation does not happen when someone receives an asset. It happens when they realize they have the wisdom, awareness, and strength to recognize its value. Ownership is not only about what is written on paper, it is about understanding responsibility, protecting what matters, and refusing to let incomplete stories define the future. Sometimes life carries a strange way of bringing forgotten pieces back together. Old records become important, lost connections become clear, hidden truths step into the light. What seemed like a coincidence begins to reveal a deeper pattern, and perhaps the greatest lesson is this: never underestimate the parts of your story that you have not discovered yet. Not everything valuable announces itself immediately. Some things require patience, awareness, and the courage to look beyond what you have always been told. A hidden property may be valuable because of what it is, but its greatest value may come from what it reveals. It can reveal history, it can reveal identity, it can reveal that a person's journey was always more significant than they realized. Thank you for watching and for being part of this journey. If this message offered you a fresh outlook, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking content. Like this video to support the channel, share it with someone who might find it meaningful, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Your support helps this community continue growing, and it means more than you know. God bless.